This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone, and I'm coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to check us out on any social media site, X-Zone Radio TV, if you'd like to visit our radio website, xzoneradiotv.com, and for all the programming that we have available for you, 724, 365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and we're coming to you around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and, of course, iHeartRadio. My guest this hour is Michael Horn, and anyone who knows anything about ufology knows Michael. He is the North American media representative for Billy Meier, and his website is www.theyfly.com. And Michael, always great having you on the show. How are you, my friend?
Well, Rob, thank you for having me on. I'm doing pretty well. It's pretty busy down here relative to your position.
Yeah.
And things, have gotten hot and heavy in a few different areas, and I'm glad that you're allowing me, this time to make some points, or at least put some info out there, what have you.
All right. Let's get right to the 2,000-pound gorilla in the room, so to speak. Okay. What is going on between you and Kevin Randle?
Well, as best as I can tell, it's my objections to gross misrepresentations, lies, and defamation about Billy Meier, the evidence as a person, the evidence in the case, et cetera, and the reason, I get a little steamed under the collar about some of this stuff. As you know, I have taken in the recent past and present to trying to make this one particular point with people generally, and that is that I think, if we look at it, we would all agree that the confirmed existence of advanced intelligence, space-traveling extraterrestrials, that would be the single most important thing in all of human history, exceeded only by actual contact with them. So any and all claims about extraterrestrials, aliens, UFOs, contacts, etc., should be carefully scrutinized instead of just viewed as entertainment, which is what happens with most of them. And when someone starts taking potshots at the Meier case, I expect them to really have done their homework. Let's start there.
Okay, but over the years, Mike, there's been many people who have taken potshots at the Billy Meier case. What's got you so riled up with this one?
Well, here's the thing. What Kevin has done, and actually is continuing to do even as we speak and do this interview right now, which I don't think is very courageous of him, is to take, and he admits this, only third, fourth, or fifth hand information, which truly is primarily disinformation, skeptical attacks, and using that as a basis to say that the Meier case is a hoax. Now, let me just be really clear here.
Okay.
He is absolutely entitled to his opinion, which he's expressed as he doesn't believe it's true, he doesn't believe this or that. So he has beliefs or he doesn't have beliefs. I don't care. And we, in terms of the people involved in the Meier case on all levels, investigating, participating, studying, we don't have beliefs. We know or we don't know. We have done a lot of homework ourselves. There's a lot of controversy. So if Kevin Randall simply came out and said, I don't believe in the Meier case, I just think it's a hoax, well, that's his opinion. As you said,
right.
Many people do that. But when you go and you use terrible, false, long debunked material to try, and you simply say, I went and found this from other people. That is not what a credible investigator, researcher should do in any field. And one last thing on that, because the UFO field is so marginalized, and often rightly so, so because people claim to be experts and all of this stuff, and they go and they do this ridiculous stuff that would not be tolerated in any other credible field. No sciences would allow such things as third, fourth, fifth-hand speculation and misstated information to be used to launch an attack on the credibility of another researcher's findings.
Michael Horn, please stand by. We've got to take our first break. Exo Nation, Michael Horn is our special guest, good friend of the Exxon. www.theyfly.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the Exxon. Don't go away.
This is the Exxon Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Exonation, Michael Horn is our guest this hour, www.theyfly.com, and you're so right, Mike, that there is so much discourse within the UFO community. There are so many people who take advantage of the shoddy ways in the majority of cases that people investigate UFO cases. They don't do a proper, thorough investigation as they should. They just make a lot of assumptions based on hearsay evidence without checking out what the hearsay evidence actually is and its credibility and its viability.
Agreed.
You know, but you and Kevin have been in this field a long time. So why do you think two seasoned professionals like yourselves can actually come to word blows like this?
Well, look, this started in a funny way. Somehow, I think it was actually from something that you sent, and Kevin is involved in, this battle about MUFON.
Oh, yeah, the petition.
Yeah, and I frankly think MUFON, should be completely marginalized to the point of extinction because it's a useless and phony organization. Whatever corruption additionally exists within it and its personnel, it is a disinformation organization. I'll leave that for the moment. But I sent Kevin information about the disinformation in MUFON that came from somebody who has a high security clearance, has been an agent. I'll leave it at that. Who knows what he's talking about, because MUFON's tried to solicit him to become a field rep or whatever it was, and he declined because he knew, because they told him they clear stuff through the CIA and State Department. He said, well, no thanks. I don't want any part of that. That's not honest. Okay. Kevin didn't agree with that. That's fine. I sent him information on Roswell from the Meier case that he knew nothing about. He wouldn't acknowledge that one way or the other. And the problem is, you know that I've had a debate with Stanton Friedman, who's another person that, pardon me, and I happen to like him as a person.
He's a great guy, yeah.
Yeah, Stanton's and Grandpa Stanton Friedman. He's not that much older than I am, but he's beating the dead horse of Roswell, for which there isn't a single piece of available evidence remaining. And What I sent to Kevin came from information in the Meier case. He knew nothing about it. And then he got into disparaging the Meier case and blah, 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 blah. And that's how I'm going, and I tried to post some links, and whether it was him censoring them or his software not allowing them, whatever, I simply then tried to say certain things on his blog that would get posted where he wouldn't censor the comments. So that's kind of how I see the genesis of this situation.
Well, let me ask you, Mike, what was the information that you were trying to get to Kevin about Roswell that was coming from Billy? That was the catalyst for this.
Well, in Meier's information, they explained to him what happens with the Roswell crash, what happened in that crash. By the way, I learned about Roswell in 1957 from a kid at a high school whose father was in the Air Force and told me about the crash. He didn't use the word Roswell, but that they found a crash, quote unquote, flying saucer, took it to Wright-Patterson Base and all of that. So I go back in terms of 60 years, I knew about Roswell. And believe me, there isn't much more that has been found out officially. There's all sorts of theories and stuff.
Yeah.
Here to answer your question specifically. The Plejaren said, yes, Roswell was a genuine crash. It's one of 8 or 9 that happened in which, and in different countries, in some cases Russia, the U.S., where the various military would scoop up what was available, take it off, intimidate people, and make sure nobody spoke about it. Some people didn't survive the experience in terms of with their lives, but these were not the extraterrestrial creators of the craft. They were androids, the robotic creatures that we will, within perhaps 1,000 years, maybe have the technology that the Zeta Reticulum people had. So all of the stuff that has been spawned off of Roswell, the Greys and all of this, is hokum, because these were not ETs coming to visit us. These were androids operating a craft. Some died upon impact. I think a couple were alive for a while, and that there may have been a few more details in there. But Kevin Randall and Stanton Friedman, none of these people knew that these are simply androids, and that's kind of in a way beside the point. But as soon as I let them know that this was sourced from the Meier material, that's when the nonsense started.
What kind of nonsense?
Well, I could get into the specifics of it so that, people will know what I'm talking about and they'll be able to verify it. I told Kevin, well, you're not going to debate. I'll simply use your words as they are on your blog. So where he starts with to me, the fail from his point of view, and these are direct quotes. He's talking about something. He said, instead, I decided to update my knowledge of Meier and see what others had to say. That's very important, because nowhere in our interaction. And his blog, I think he's very happy that it got as much action and traffic, but nowhere in there did he actually reveal that he had any firsthand knowledge. So let me go on, and I will now kind of tell you what he did. He tried to substantiate his position, and the way he does that after this, informing us that it's all based on other people's hearsay, he quotes a guy named Anthony Wharton, a British guy who back in, I think it was somewhere between 2004, 2009, this guy's an amateur photographer who tried to duplicate Meier's photos, claimed that he had, and put up a website and with a supposed challenge and claiming that he had spoken to Meier and me. He never spoke to Meier. And let me just clarify, his photographs are unfortunate, very low quality, easy to detect fakes, but he wanted to make a big thing out of this. I went back and forth in emails. I think we might have Skyped once or twice. I know this guy through communication. His dad wasn't feeling well. We had a human being kind of interaction. I think he interviewed me, but he didn't know what he was doing. He was trying to puff himself up. So relying on poor old Tony Wharton, who's disappeared from the scene, of course, like all the rest of the skepters and debunkers, he sums up after he posts, copies and pastes Wharton's something rambling thing from Wharton. Then this is what Kevin says. This is the sort of answer, suggesting they had already done it, meaning done all the photography, because I should explain. Anthony Wharton wanted more photographs, and we had already, since the 1980s, Billy took his last photographs in 81. He actually took over 1,500 photos and films. We have a book with 617 beautifully recently digitized. So, there's no shortage of Meier's photos. There's 3 new analyses. So here, let's get back to this. So Kevin says, on quoting or in referring to Wharton, this is the sort of answer suggesting they had already done it and were not interested in doing it again. It's what I expect from those who simply don't have the proof they claim. I can't tell you the number of times that I've asked someone for their military records to support their claims of military service and get a similar answer when they say they've done so-and-so. To do so again is pointless. I'll also note when blah, blah. Here's what he concludes that paragraph with. Here, rather than produce the evidence, they refuse with a ridiculous excuse. If you wish to prove something that is outside the mainstream, you must expect repeated requests for the evidence. That's science, repeatability. Rob, people can think whatever they want, but we've never failed to bring forward. The Meier case is the only one that has this volume and quality of still irreproducible evidence. And Kevin is showing a cynicism and an ignorance and an arrogance, trying to say that we've refused to bring forward evidence. The original analyses date back to around 1979, 1980. 3 new, independent, expert, scientifically solid analyses were done within the last 2 years with all the protocols and technologies listed, freely available on the internet. Why didn't Kevin just click on my site before he stuck his foot in his mouth and use this as part of an attack?
Well, let me ask you, didn't Jim Dilettoso also do an analysis on the Billy Meier photos?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because, I can never get around to everything, but one of the people in my blog just sent me a link the other day, of all things. This is amazing. I think it's with Alejandro Rojas, who's one of the debunkers from the disinformation outfit known as Open Minds. He's interviewing Dilettoso, and he's saying, well, there were no original negatives for the Meier case. And he said, oh, no. He says, there were.
That's right.
Yeah, he says, I examined, analyzed, reported on 4 of them. Yep. And poor Rojas is sitting there trying to figure out a way to attack it.
I had Jim on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Great.
And we were talking about the Billy Meier case. And I'll tell wait a sec, let me get my words right here. The brain's going one way, the mouth is going the other. I've told you this before, Mike. I used to be one of the biggest skeptics of the Billy Meier case. And yet, when you look at the prophecies and the knowledge that this man has, with no other, in my opinion, reason for doing this, plus the fact that how many times has there have been attempts on his life?
23 documented. I've interviewed witnesses to 14, and I've seen one of the bullet holes through a window myself.
So, you take all this into consideration, and the preponderance of evidence is for Billy Meier. And Jim DiLatasso said right here on this show that he saw no evidence whatsoever of tampering.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And just a side note, I want to get that link from you so that I can include it as well. But I want to add something now that you brought that up that just happened to me. Well, it's a continuation. In January of this year, an American expat living in Asia contacted me, and he said he was interested in this Billy Meier case for a few reasons. He was not only a retired policeman, he was a retired OSI officer, investigator, Office of Special Investigation. I think it was for the Air Force or whatever. And this Billy Meier case had attracted his attention. He had some issues with it, too. So for a couple of months, we went back and forth. His main issues with it turns out, initially, the primary issue was with the Talmud Emmanuel, the new book put up at Meier, which I am not interested at the moment because I want to go, and stay on explaining why we're speaking today. But he called me this last Saturday, I think it was, yes. And he said, look, I got to tell you something. I've been digging into this, as you know. I've had two issues other than the Talmud Emmanuel. One has been, some of these UFO photos, and the other has been this woman, Pobol Cheng, who claims to have been there as a child in India. And he said, I've looked at that whole thing on India and Meier's 1964 photos. I'm telling you, as an investigator, I cannot find anything there that does not tell me that's credible. He says everything about it, the newspaper article, the photos themselves, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I looked more into who this woman, Pobol Cheng, is, and it appears she really was in India there. He said, I'm stuck now telling you that this simply looks credible.
All right, let's go to the commercial break with the news, and we'll be right back. Michael Horn is our guest, www.theyfly.com, and we'll be back here in the X Zone from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Michael Horn is our guest this hour, Exonation, www.theyfly.com. And as always, Mike, great having you here on the show.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for the opportunity. If I may, I wanted to, our conversation there was about evidence and prophecies and things, and somebody else had come into it. But the issue with Kevin Randle took yet another just not good step. He misstepped again. Not only because he didn't look at any of the evidence, the independent scientific analyses of photos, the authentication of such and other evidence, but he went on to deliberately tell people that Meier hadn't actually forewarned of the terrorist attacks of Paris as far back as 1981. So in trying to support this inaccurate claim, here he does it again. He quotes another failed skeptic who refers to an article of mine, of all things, quoting Meier's 1958 warning about radical Islamist terrorism spreading worldwide. Now, there's two super important things here. One, Meier's 1981 and his 1987 specific warnings about the attacks coming to Paris and all of Europe, etc., they're not only a matter of record online and in my blog for years, they're also in one of my DVDs from 2004. 2004, it's right in there, the Meier Contacts. Now, so this isn't about we're backdating anything. Now, the second thing, which is equally amazing to me, both Meier and this other failed skeptic, they're so hell-bent on trying to destroy Meier and attack Meier that they don't even pay attention in trying to do this hatchet job that Meier in 1958 is warning the world about radical Islamist terrorism spreading worldwide. They so want to attack. And this is not a sign, a mark, an indication of an objective investigator, a neutral person or persons. So then Kevin Randall goes on. In my opinion, he further indicts himself as not being any kind of credible researcher in the UFO field. He might be great in other places. Then he says, there doesn't seem to be any evidence that Meier did anything other than make some vague statements that could be adapted to any of a number of world events. Any evidence? We've got over 200 specific examples of Meier's prophetically accurate scientific and world event-related information. It's happening in the world now as we speak. There's no shortage. We can prove it. Copyrighted, dated, published books and documents, stuff online. No evidence because Kevin himself, a little bit too arrogantly, I think, and maybe he can redeem himself if he wants to put on his, big boy outfit here. He didn't do his homework. And on his blog, of course, all the naysayers and typical characters chiming in, attacking Meier, attacking me. I have bad manners to stand up. So here he basically ends his, what would you call it, his hatchet job by this quote. And this is straight off of, this is what he says. Although Cal Korff has discredited himself repeatedly with his antics, he accurately wrote in his book, Spaceships of the Pleiades, quote unquote, the Billy Meier, quote, evidence is now a money-making machine that shows no signs of slowing down. And then Kevin says, this says it all. So now this is a money-making machine, even though Billy Meier and all the people in Switzerland working with him are under strict Swiss laws pertaining to non-profits. They are a non-profit group, sorry. I do all my work voluntarily. I am not paid by Meier or any FIGU people to do this. I either rise or fall. Basically, if people buy the stuff that I've spent my own money to produce or that other people who've written books like Meier, what have you have. So now the low blow, now this is a money-making outfit, and this says it all. So this, to me, is not indicative of somebody who is objective, who wants to know the truth, which is the only thing ever worth knowing, and who hasn't taken the time and trouble to even perceive that what we hammer away on in this, what I certainly do, is the Meier Contacts as the key to our future survival. And by our, I mean very much the American and Canadian and other peoples throughout the world. So this is why I got hot under the collar and calling Kevin Randall out as no kind of a credible UFO investigator. And I'll just say it, it's very cowardly to spend your time while I'm here trying to, present and using his own words. He's sitting there trying to do more of a hatchet job, doing the same thing. In the blog he's currently written, he's attributing to me narrating a photo book in which Randy Winters is actually narrating a view of Billy Meier's photos, some of which Meier and the player already said these were not authentic photos. We're sorry. These were switched, blah, blah, blah. Well, Kevin's spending his time there and misattributing it to me instead of digging through the documentation so that he doesn't get so embarrassed by his incompetency and by a very transparent very transparent, unprofessional level of conduct. I'll leave it at that. So this is what put the thing in my craw. And as you know, I was willing to, and I did debate Stanton Friedman, who came on unloaded for bear. Unfortunately, after all the years of his own, he was connected to Wendell Stevens. He knew the Meier case was authentic from the get-go. He wasn't happy about not being allowed into it. In this case, Kevin Randle, something just got, he kind of he got a little over-impressed with his work on a non-important UFO case, and that's what I do consider Roswell, and all the rest for which there's nothing you can do with it.
Yeah.
We are now in the day and age of this stuff is coming down on us that has been foretold for decades and actually far longer through the Meier case and the Playaran lineage. And these people are trying to warn us. So I will make a lot of noise. If Kevin wants to man up, and as I think you've said, he's indicated that he'll debate me at a future point, I'll be glad to do that. But I'm going to heartily recommend two things. One, he gets about the business of researching, and two, I will be glad to point him in the direction of anything he wants to review. I will be glad to address any questions and challenges in the debate or prior to it. And that's where I stand on this. I just want him to man up and not wimp out because it's going to be too costly to all the good people of our countries.
Let me ask you an off-the-topic question. What do you think the big fascination with Roswell is? Like 7 years later, 70-plus years, nothing's changed.
Well, I'll tell you, Rob, and I'm glad to, just say, look, people like ooh and ah. They like entertainment and unresolved things and fantasizing about evil aliens. The whole Roswell thing was an element that gave rise to the disinformation radio program War of the Worlds that was ordered by a former late president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he commanded under threat of death that Orson Welles do a performance of H.G. Wells, unrelated to each other, story, The War of the Worlds, which he did so effectively that people committed suicide. This was the beginning of the disinformation campaign. So all the people who hawk Roswell, apart from finding an easy mark that they don't have to prove anything because they can't, as is the case with the rest of this UFO industry, they can represent themselves as experts and get people titillated and running around in circles and basically amounting to nothing except wasting their valuable life's time on something for which not even one photograph exists and no remaining eyewitness who can really, with nothing, even if somebody comes forward and says they saw crash, nothing. The Meier case, over 1,200 clear, primarily daytime, irreproducible, stunningly clear UFO photos, films, video, metal samples and sound recordings, 125 plus eyewitnesses, of which I am one, 5 other photographers, and the beat goes on. 26,000 plus pages of information, which includes over 200 specific examples of prophetically accurate scientific and world event related information. What's not to want to find out about? So Roswell beats me. Go entertain yourselves, folks. It's sci-fi at this point.
Wow. I've been doing this show now for 26 years, Mike. And whether it's UFOs, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's ghosts.
Oops, I didn't hear you.
I said I've been doing this show now for 26 years. 5 nights a week, 4 hours a night. And in all the years, nothing, my friend, I mean absolutely nothing has changed. I mean, the new people have come, they're getting interested in it, and so on. But here we are, a society that is so technologically advanced than any other part of our history that we know of. Still, same old, same old. And people say, well, Rob, why do you do it then? It's because I want to find the truth. I know the truth is out there. And that's why I like having you on the show, because I know that Billy Meier is part of that truth.
To me, he's the biggest part of it because the more you're able to, look into information, and there's so much of it, you realize that it literally touches every aspect of our lives. There's information in the Meier case about 9/11, the destruction of the World Trade Center. He published the warning about it in 1987 and discussed it again in 1989. And a few years ago, when he was talking about the CIA and other things, explained what the complicity was in allowing that event to happen. There's almost nothing that you can think of. He's the first person to warn about the NSA, Microsoft backdoor into the computers, all of this stuff. WikiLeaks comes out. Well, we've got that. We published it before them. So this is why this material is so suppressed in the mainstream. Alex Jones won't touch this. Believe me, I've sent him everything, I've talked to you about. I've sent him links. They won't mention it because he's on this, big crusade. Look, he provided great assistance, let's say for the election of Donald Trump, however anybody views that. And he comes out with these startling new things. Civil war in America. Meier warned about civil war in America in 81 and 87. But you see, everybody, including all the alternative news media, if they're to acknowledge the Meier case and let their listeners and readers and viewers know, people rush to find out about Billy Meier, not them, because they don't know anything. They truly don't know any compared to the play Aaron and Meier. You can talk about Fukushima, the BP disaster. You can talk about the information from the play Aaron and from Meier and from the prophets of old describing what's coming to our world that's unfolding before our very eyes. In the 1940s, Meier's first teacher, this man named Svath, tells him about this crazy woman in Germany who's going to open the doors to this migrant problem that will spread worldwide and bring nothing but disaster and crime. It will ruin Europe. It will cause so much destruction. And, it's like these people that now are just getting, hey, wait a minute, this isn't so good for Europe. And they foretold, Meier's told, I think in the 40s, again, that this woman will do this and that the leaders will be too weak to stand up to her.
All right, Mike, we'll get back to Angela Merkel on the other side of this break.
Sure.
Exonation, Michael Horn is our guest. Theyfly.com. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Exonation, Michael Horn is our guest this hour, www.theyfly.com. We're talking about the Billy Meier case. Mike, what else would you like to say?
Well, in terms of this issue with Kevin Randle, I want to say this. We, and I don't just mean people who are involved with UFOs and that study and all, we, the people of this planet, we're in this together. We really are. And it's all coming down to a time foretold by the play Aaron when people would recognize Meier's single singular, I should say, authenticity as a contactee and an actual prophet, a non-religious, non-cultic thing. Now, about that. Kevin Randall and I right now, let's put it this way, we have different points of view. And I'm very critical of the way he's conducted his remarks and expressing them on the Meier case. I'm glad to debate him about it, if you'd like. And I'm also glad to assist him to get up to speed on it. Because sometimes your better alliances with people can come when you have had strong disagreements, but both people are solely interested, as you put it, in the truth. The truth transcends Billy Meier. It transcends me being a representative or Kevin on Roswell, and you as a host of a show that reaches lots of people to bring this to the world. We are in it together now. We are going to be seeing exponential events over the coming months and years that will be unstoppable environmentally and geopolitically. And my intentions are to get as much of the information in here, because at the core of this case is what is called the spiritual teaching, again, non-religious, belief-free, how to live and survive and thrive and think and change the direction, the course that may be a failed one in our global lives and in our individual lives. That's simply a teaching. It's not a belief system. It's there to help us via the play Aaron, via the prophets of old, via Billy Meier of today, that we may have something to help us in our internal work, to reformat, if you will, ourselves, to update our operating systems, however you want to put it, that we can learn how thinking really does work and get away from the terrible polarities of religion, politics, the tremendous disinformation-laden UFO community and industry, all of these things which are fast going to become completely irrelevant to our future survival. The Meier material now isn't even so much intended for us of today, strangely enough, except the us that is the future generation, that are the future generations. The children, the grandchildren, the college students, and those that come after all the aforementioned. We have a responsibility, if we are going to be good stewards and good caregivers and parents and all the rest, to wake up ourselves, educate ourselves, struggle through some of these things by ourselves and together, come together in like-minded groups. It doesn't have to all be Meier material, just to start now, fortifying ourselves, 1, 2, 5 of us, however, for this coming time, which, based on the impeccable accuracy so far from Meier and the play Aaron, is knocking on our doorstep. And I'll just add, in 2012, Meier was speaking with the play Aaron, and he said something like this: I remember you're saying that if the people of America don't change to a better direction, probably the superpower USA will cease to exist after 2020. To me, probably means that the superpower United States of America is in the process of breaking up in those civil wars that he long foretold, which we see we are already in the early stages of, meaning anarchy and chaos here and in other places. So that's why I get steamed under the collar. I don't want disinformation spread unchallenged without reaching out and saying, hey, I'll help you to look into where this evidence and analyses and all the rest can be found. And then you can indeed criticize, make your own decisions, whatever, but please don't spew third-hand, long-debunked, skeptical garbage and attacks on a man who's survived multiple attempts on his life and other terrific hardships, having his arm ripped off his body, to carry through for the past 75 years to try to help humankind of Earth. That's all.
Wow. What are some of the other prophecies that we can share with the audience tonight that Billy has predicted that have not come true yet?
Well, we haven't had the Third or technically Fourth World War with Russia. Even when his first teacher Spath was looking into this in 1948, he said a conflict with Russia is still not a certainty that it has to go into a world war. The next year, 12-year-old Meier put a poem out on the internet, and in that poem, actually, his take on it was in stark contrast to what his teacher said. And while I'm mentioning that, I can probably give it to you if you want, because it unfortunately portends a very, very difficult time coming to the world, and certainly to America. Let me just see if I'll find it. In the meantime, I'll talk about other things that Meier has talked about and hasn't happened. There's new epidemics coming. Mm-hmm. There are new parts of Italy are going to go into the sea. That's not a happy thing either. Parts of Germany are going, because Italy is already in the midst of this terrible, caldera opening up over there. They're just short of it, where all these earthquakes are going to, they're in the process of erupting and volcanic eruptions and all this stuff. And what's going to happen is that parts of Italy will fall into the sea when I think it's called Phlegaran Fields caldera erupts and opens up there. And when that happens, that is the beginning of also when the Vatican will be destroyed. After that, this caldera in Germany is going to erupt, and that is going to turn northern part of Europe into what he said was going to be a sea of fire. I think I'm, by the way, just about onto the, oh yes, here it is. I think, anyway, here's what Meier wrote in 1949 at 12 years of age, after his own mentor had said, well, the potential Third World War, which, by the way, in the Hanok prophecies, drags Russia into it as well. So, drags Canada into it as well. So here's what Meier said, Edward Albert, at the age of 12. America and Europa land will tremble when, from the east, freedom comes with a hard hand, which is suppressed by America and Europe, which, however, will be punished by a hard lesson for their world domination sense, which they evilly harbor, and thus put countries and peoples in dictatorships. The Great Bear will come, which brings freedom. Russian land that fights against and brings down the whole unfreedom, which in America and Europe rings out from many mouths, as in many other countries around the world. But the bear from the east will eliminate unfreedom and reconcile the whole to peace and freedom. But it will take a long time until then, with complaints which will be carried forth into the world with tears, because evil terrorism, 1948, dictatorship, hatred, and war will deny victory to peace and freedom. Might and world domination, greed, tear the world apart. And in many countries, even many a death cry rings out, because America, as well as Europe, carry forth unfreedom and strike the human beings with wars, hardship, and misery. The causers of unpeace, whose actions are based on might, will be taught by the bear, as well as it will be proclaimed to them that claims for gaining world might evilly stirs up unpeace, which leads the humankind into death as well as to decadence. That is why the bear will tear apart all the terribleness of America, and Europe will also be promised the same, when, with acts of Gewalt, wars by the world grubbing America, destroy everything in the world, every which way. When the same thing echoes from the European dictatorship and murderous cries of evil terrorism ring out, then the bear will start to bite the unfreedom, and this will tear apart the evil actions of the Western mights. Now that's Edward Albert Meier at 12, and let's go back 5,000 or more years to a prophet named Jeremiah, who predicted a whole bunch of stuff after the Hanok prophecies. And here is the paragraph that, well, here's the paragraph. And there will be new and big empires across the big ocean. And one of these empires will send out new legions of barbaric hordes under the command of powerful rulers who are degenerated in the worst form of inhumanity to carry out wars and conquer the world in order to get hold of the country's mineral resources. But beyond the big ocean, the walls of cities and villages of the conquerors wanting to seize the world's power will collapse, and the empire will then be destroyed and be only a scorched land and muddy waters. He's talking about my country, where I live, where Kevin lives, and 330 other nice Americans from whom all of this has been hidden, so that
Mike, I hate to do this, buddy, but we've got to say so long for tonight. Exo Nation, check out www.theyfly.com. Michael will be back with us hopefully next week. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go away.